The Sirens of Rhine, Book 1, The Innocent and the Condemned, by Kaylynne Spauls. Chapter 1, Lily. The feathers on my neck stood when I felt the cool metal press against the small of my back. I'd never been held at gunpoint. I suppose it wasn't how I thought it would be, though I'd never considered it too closely. The man behind me swept my liquid, bronze-colored hair aside to look at the hidden bronze-tinted feathers that had reacted to his presence. He breathed one word. Siren. I'd always known I wasn't human. Even my eyelashes hid fine feathers, making them impossibly thick. They were well blended, but a closer look would reveal their secrets. My deep brown eyes affected everyone, although some reacted stronger than others. Their gaze glossed over in my presence, a telltale sign that something bad was going to happen. He knew what I was. It's funny, I was more concerned with that than the weapon I was being held with. My olive-toned skin prickled over with fear. The big brute twisted my arm behind me and pushed me forward. "Walk," he grunted. I hated myself when tears blurred my vision. "Where are you taking me?" He jerked on my arm, sending a jolt of pain up my shoulder. "Quiet." I can't help but laugh. There I was being kidnapped, and all I could think was that the muffins were burning. Perhaps I was going into shock. I'd started that job a few weeks before. When my boss promoted me to head pastry chef, I'd been so excited. Except for the hours, it was exactly what I wanted to do. I was not a morning person, so waking at 4 a.m. in order to arrive there and bake before we opened had been a big adjustment. I preferred to be alone. Hiding in the back kitchen suited me just fine. Well, that's not entirely true. I liked being around people. It's just that they didn't normally like being around me. Strangers didn't bother me, but anyone who knew me whispered too much. I was attractive. Unrealistically so. I put movie stars to shame on a good day. The men around here tended to respond dramatically to me. Needless to say, the women hated me for it. All men found me appealing, but there were some who became almost hypnotized in my company. Something inside them felt wrong. Being attractive had never been a positive thing. "Please," I tried to beg. "Please don't do this." I cried out when the butt of the gun was slammed into my shoulder. "Shut up!" There was no stopping the betraying whimper that slipped out. Suddenly, I was tossed to the ground when the man fell on top of me with a grunt and a loud bang. The gun slid from his hand, and I took the opportunity to scurry away with a yelp. Curling up against the wall, I turned to watch what was happening. Christian held a baseball bat over his head and brought it down on my attacker. I screamed, covering my eyes. Why didn't I grab the gun? My cell phone sat in my pocket, and yet I stayed frozen in the corner, letting him take on the man single-handed. Christian was also a large man, standing tall at 6'2" with powerfully broad shoulders. His light blonde hair was cut short above his chiseled features. He looked older than 24. "Lily." His deep voice amplified my name in the empty bake shop. I looked up at him with tears in my eyes. "Is he the only one?" I nodded, pressing my hand to my forehead. He walked over and pulled me to my feet. As the son of Charles Stanford, the richest man in Rhine, few dared to challenge him on anything, especially when it came to me. He was known for his temper and violent behavior. Looking me over with his crystal blue eyes, they settled on my face. To anyone watching, he probably seemed tender and concerned. I almost wanted him to wrap me in his arms and tell me it was okay, until his eyes glossed over and his hand clamped down on my wrists. "What did he want? Where was he taking you?" His voice was harsh as he fired off questions. I tried to stammer a reply. I don't know. The back of his hand came across my cheek so swiftly that I was sent flying to the ground again. The rusty, iron-like taste of blood pooled in my mouth as I looked up at him weakly. "No one touches you but me." I had no idea how many times I'd heard that over the years. In his mind, I belonged to him. Walking over to the window, he pulled out his cell and called the police. I waited in silence for them to arrive, watching him pace around the room like a wild animal. He had just saved me from horrors I couldn't even have fathomed at that point in my life. That man would have dragged me off to a world of nightmares, but all I could think was, why didn't I feel any safer? Kai. Blood dripped down my arm from the shackles that bit into my flesh. My hands were bound above my head. The throbbing in my shoulder had finally dulled after the several hours I'd spent in this position. Other girls around me were curled up on the ground. Many were crying, but the majority of them were new. Those of us who'd been traded since childhood became immune to tears. Some prayed to the gods. That was a sure sign that they were very new. Anyone who had been here longer than a few weeks either didn't believe or thought if the gods did exist, they sure as shit didn't care. Most were nymphs. I tried not to roll my eyes as they sniveled and sniffed in fear. A younger, dark-skinned girl sat in prayer position on the ground and bowed. I shook my head in disgust. One nymph watched me curiously. That was why so many were here. Curiosity was their weakness. She was an Asteri, a nymph of the stars. Her pale skin and silver hair shimmered even in the darkness. Her eyes were the color of the night sky, with flecks like diamonds humans would convince themselves they didn't see. I was impressed she'd been caught. They were not easy to find. Sweat ran down my back, sticking my clothing to my skin. I envied the naiads who could summon water. What good was being a creature of the ocean if I could still dehydrate? Perhaps it had to do with fresh versus salt water. You'd think one of them could summon a breeze or something. The truck rattled back and forth as we drove through the desert. I'd been a slave as long as I could remember. If I had a life before this, the memories were lost. I used to wonder how I got here. Didn't I have a family? Parents? Siblings? Grandparents? Did anyone care that I was gone? How old was I? Did I even have a last name? After a time, the questions quieted. In the end, they didn't matter. My flaming red hair tumbled down to my waist in loose waves. My skin was naturally tan, but covered with dirt that kept leaking into the vehicle. I was tall and curvy. My torn blue jeans hung loosely on my hips. The shirt I wore was a tank top that had been white once upon a time, but was now brownish and speckled with blood. It hugged my torso and left a good portion of my stomach showing. The girl was staring at me when I looked back over at her. Her glittering eyes didn't blink. "What?" I croaked, hoarse. Her voice was musical and smooth. "You are a siren." She said it as though it should be obvious. "Why do you keep staring at me?" I said it slowly so she couldn't mistake the question. Nymphs were scatterbrained little ninnies. Cocking her head to the side, she answered, "I have not seen one for a long time. I thought you were extinct." "Well, I'm not," I sighed, looking up at the ceiling. "You are chained." "Oh, really? I hadn't noticed," I snapped. Her gleaming eyes continued to look me over until they settled on my arms. Tied above my head, the hundreds of tiny scars were visible to the world. They covered all the way around in perfect rows, each the same size. "Why does your arm bear such wounds?" I tensed, not wanting to answer the question she may not have realized was very personal. None of your business, I growled. Her brow creased in confusion. Why do you fight? Groaning, I replied, because it's better than dying on my ass. Chuckling, she continued, You are strong, Siren. I have a name. Tell it to me. Until then, I have nothing else to call you. She was annoying me, but I answered anyway. Kai. Ah, she marveled. Keeper of the keys. What? Your name, she explained. It means keeper of the keys. She was weird. I really wanted this conversation to end. You think I was named for a reason? Perhaps names seem rather insignificant. I'd spent my life wondering what my last name would have been. Kai is the only title I'd ever known. Where it came from, what it means, or even if it's my full name, I didn't know. Like so many pieces of my past, it remained a mystery. Some of us have names that express who we are. I am Arya. My name means air. It suited an Aster eye. How do you know this? It is my gift. I see things. Like what? I couldn't help the condescending laugh. Diamond eyes bore into mine, and for a moment I held my breath. Like you have gifts, yet you do not bear their mark. You do not know who you are. Her voice had dropped, sounding ethereal. In an instant, I believed her. Ash. I'm the worst siren in the world, I hissed at myself as my blade sliced through the man's throat. Warm blood flowed over my hand, causing me to rethink wiping away the traitorous tear on my cheek. The feathers in my hair ruffled as his gargled cries died away with the life in his eyes. The expressions were always the same. Confusion, disbelief, betrayal, and finally, just as death settled over them quietly, acceptance. Every time my emotions played out just as before. Duty, followed by pleasure, realization, regret, and of course, when they finally went limp in my arms, disgust. My father told me never to cry when I killed. A siren didn't feel compassion or remorse. Not for humans, and especially not for men. I wiped my blade on the man's shirt and returned it to the sheath strapped to my thigh. Midnight black waves fell over my shoulder as my hair came undone from its bun. I took a deep breath and walked over to the bathroom sink. My electric blue eyes stared back at me in the mirror as I washed my hands. I didn't worry about someone walking in. I could have made them believe they'd never seen a thing. Once my hands were physically clean of blood, I dried them off and gathered my hair back on top of my head. My normally pale skin looked sickly as I tried to pull myself together. I'd managed to keep the blood off of my sundress for once. Peeking at the tattoo that raced across my shoulder, I shuddered. The origins of the mark were still a mystery to me. If a jeweler could melt down his material to make a brilliant ink, my onyx and sapphire patterns would be the result. From the base of my neck over to the left side of my shoulder, waves danced across my skin. I still didn't understand what they meant, or what had happened the night they appeared. You were born for this, I scolded myself as I leaned on the sink and glared at my reflection. You were chosen by the gods. Softer, I whispered in a guilty confession. For a moment there, you enjoyed it. For a moment, I had enjoyed it. For one moment, the lethal killer behind the innocent doe eyes and ivory skin had bared its teeth. For a moment, I had embraced who I was, and like all the times before, that moment took away a little piece of who I am. Slowly and painfully, those moments wore me down. How long until their assassins came for me again?